Welcome to the Page Turnerz podcast, where book lovers unite to celebrate the enchanting world of fiction. With your host, Paul A. Brooks. In each episode, we'll dive into the captivating realms of storytelling, exploring the pages that transport us to magical places and introduce us to unforgettable characters. In each episode, we'll embark on a creative expedition through the minds of seasoned and emerging writers to unravel the mysteries and unveil the passion that fuels their stories. Join us on this odyssey through the pages and pixels of imagination, where words become worlds and stories illuminate our lives. So, pour yourself a coffee and immerse yourself in discussions about writing, gripping plots, heroes and villains, and the sheer joy of escaping into a well-crafted story.
On today's podcast, I had the pleasure of speaking to Alan Shivers, author of young adult slasher horror. Having read some of his Europea Halls trilogy, his books certainly live up to his name. Now, if you're a fan of the 90s slasher movies, then you'll love his books. This is the chilling and not so chilling Alan Shivers. Hi, and welcome, Alan, to the show. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're in Belgium, in Brussels, is that right, in Belgium?
Yep, in the capital of Belgium, indeed.
Oh, wow. I've never been there. It is somewhere I would like to go. It's interesting. I mean, I've been to America and sort of around Europe, if you like, but no, I've never actually been anywhere in Europe. So anyway, yeah. But yeah, it's really nice to speak to someone from Europe. And you're only about an hour in front of us here in the UK, aren't you? Is that right?
Yeah, just an hour ahead. And to be fair, it's only a 2-hour Eurostar to go from Brussels to London, so it's not even that far if you think about it, right?
I know. It just means that I'm lazy then, doesn't it, really? That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, but I'm being nice about it.
And so, again, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. And you write young adult slasher horror. Is that a fair description?
That's a very fair description. Yeah, it's quite niche, but
I think so too. I mean, I read the first part of your trilogy, which we're obviously going to be talking about today, and your name, Alan Shivers, really lives up to how I felt when I read the first few pages.
I'm glad
of your Europa Halls trilogy. So absolutely. So that's kind of where I want to start with, really, because Alan Shivers, that is, it's going to be a pen name. That's got to be a pseudonym, hasn't it?
Yep.
And I said it's so fitting. I mean, some of the great writers, some of the best well-known writers like Stephen King, Richard Bachman, and J.K. Rowling, she uses Robert Galbraith, a male name, for goodness sake. So, but yours, Alan Shivers, is absolutely fantastic. So would you care to elaborate on why you use a pen name?
Yeah, there's two reasons. One of them being that I'm Belgian, so my first language is Flemish or Dutch, depends on the way you look at it. And my real name is very difficult to pronounce. I know usually only people that are from Belgium can pronounce it or from the Netherlands. And I thought there's no way I would have any kind of hopefully international reach writing in English, not in my mother tongue.
Yeah.
So that's the first reason. And the second one is it's kind of an homage to my favorite slasher from the 90s. I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Right.
Because I don't know if you remember Sarah Michelle Gellar. At the time she was very big with Buffy and Scream 2.
Yeah.
And her name in I Know What You Did Last Summer was Alan Shivers. And her chase scene is my all-time favorite chase scene in any kind of horror or slasher. So I thought, okay, I'll just kind of switch that around and go from Helen to Alan Shivers to show that my big love for 90s slashers is put into these books, basically.
Yeah, well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. That's really good. I love it. It lives up to it. It really does absolutely perfectly. So we'll talk about. I'll get you to talk about your trilogy shortly, Europa Halls, because I've read some of it.
And you're still here, so that's good.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there going, oh yeah. So yeah, it's really good. So let me ask you then at this one, why horror? You know, I mean, I like sci-fi, and I would say that there is an element of horror in it anyway. There's certainly some slasher stuff in there, but yours specifically, I can't even say it specifically. Why horror or slasher horror?
I've kind of always grown up with it. I'm from '86, so I really grew up with 90s slashes. There was a revival going on that happened all because of Scream, Wes Craven's creation at the time.
Yeah.
This kind of resurgence that came about with Scream, Urban Legends, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Valentine. And I have really, really good memories of just watching that with friends, going to the cinema or having like late night get-togethers. and I've always loved those kind of films. I actually never used to read horror. I was always reading drama or historical fiction.
Mhm.
It's just this kind of thing that I wanted in a selfish way to create a slasher that kind of felt like it was 90s, even though it's set in contemporary Brussels or other cities.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just I've always been a massive fan, and I kind of selfishly wanted to have my own slasher. So yeah.
That's great because I mean, across your trilogy, you sort of cross Europe, really, don't you,
Hmm.
in terms of the cities?
Yeah.
So well, again, I'll get you to talk about those more shortly, but I think that's great. And where do you, I mean, other than the 90s horror movies and kind of
Hmm.
those sort of things that you've watched, I mean, I'm sort of Friday the 13th and Jason and all that lot. I love all those kind of movies,
The
absolutely.
80s more, yeah.
Yeah. So other than the movies and those sort of things from the 90s, do you draw inspiration from anywhere else for your stories?
Well, I started reading quite a lot of slashers the moment that I started writing my own, just to kind of see, okay, how do people go about it? Because it's a niche genre that is quite visual if you think about it. There's
Yeah.
the jump scares, there's the music, the tense music that builds up a certain atmosphere. You
Yeah.
don't have any of that when you're writing. So I was doubting, like, how do you actually do that? So I started reading a couple of other ones, like Adam Cesar's. He's got Clown in the Cornfields, which is also YA slasher, and that's turned into a movie as we speak at the moment. So I'm quite curious to watch that. Then Sarah Jules, she's got a really good slasher out, Don't Lie. Emerald O'Brien, she's got like an entire series out called Bleed. So I started kind of maybe not inspiration as to I didn't want to copy paste them, but I did want to have a bit of a sense of, okay, how do you build up tension through writing and not through music or through visuals?
Mm.
And yeah, I did take some mental notes by reading those books.
Yeah, I think we all do. I mean, I spoke to
Hmm.
Sarah Jules, on another podcast. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. The sort
She's
of
my
stuff.
buddy. Yeah.
Yeah. She's lovely. Yeah, she's lovely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we always draw kind of inspiration, I think, from other writers, particularly. And your genre, as you said, is very visual.
Hmm.
So I would imagine, you kind of got to write in a way that creates the theatre in your reader's mind, so they can,
Hmm.
because it's more of a, it's not just the words, but it's that emotional experience that you
Yeah.
want them to feel the fear, if you like,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
and make them shiver. So, did you find that
Good
hard?
pun.
Yeah, I know. I thought so too. Sorry, and let me write that down. Did you find it hard to sort of get to the point where you could write it so that it was very
Mhm.
theatrical as opposed to wordy?
Yeah, I think mostly the chase scenes and actual kill scenes were very hard to write. I think dialogues and descriptive writing is not easy, but it flows a lot more easily because I have experience with that in the past. But then
Mhm.
these particular scenes, I think the main thing for me was drawing in the senses that really helped.
Yeah,
As in, she tastes the metallic, the metallicness of the blood, or there's this leathery glove that you're smelling that, evokes another kind of fear, another kind of sense, or triggers something.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
think using the senses was the main one for me that helps to create those kind of scenes. And I write through first person POV,
yeah,
which is not done that much within the genre. A lot of times it's third person, sorry, like omniscient narratives. So I really wanted people to feel the fear that these young girls, these teenagers are feeling, even all the way through their death, which a lot of times doesn't really happen in books. So you're really following them up to their final moments, which hopefully helps the reader to be kind of, I don't know, experiencing it through them. That's
I
the
think
idea, at
you're
least.
right. Actually, writing in first person like you've done, I think it really does because you are kind of, you sort of absorb into that
Hmm.
character as well, and I think it makes it easier for the reader. For me, when I read it, to experience more of what's going on. For
Hmm.
example,
Yeah.
with Alsbeta, is it? She's the first chapter in the first book. Is that how you
Algebra.
pronounce it?
Yeah, yeah. The
Yeah.
Czech lady. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, Czech lady. We'll talk a little bit more about her shortly, but yeah, I kind of really felt um, how she was feeling at the beginning because of the way that you'd written it in first person. I think that was really good. So when you're writing it, I mean, I ask everybody this. So when you're writing your stories, do you have a kind of a writing routine? So are you a plotter like Sarah, or are you a pantser,
A
a bit like
panther.
me?
I think I'm wavering in between
Yeah.
a bit. I have, in a sense, I do have a plot, as in I write down little plot lines
Yeah.
and character descriptions, and like an exercise that I do for myself is I write diary entries through each perspective of different characters to kind of get to know my characters
Ah, brilliant.
and
Yeah.
see what kind of structure would they use. Would they use different words perhaps because they're from different nationalities? So that's the kind of plotting that I use. But then when it comes to actually writing it, a lot of the time, well, a lot of the times I've only written 3 books. Uh, the stories do kind of change as I go along. Not the main ones, but certain dialogues perhaps, or certain even death scenes that I've changed, or even originally the killer reveals have changed as I was writing it, going, hold on, but this might be a little bit too obvious. I don't think this has been done very much. So then you switch it as you go along, like
Yeah.
you do, I suppose.
Yeah. I was going to ask you when you were writing the kill scenes, if you like,
Hmm.
did they change very much? I mean, depending on how many drafts you went through, did they change as you went through?
They did. All of them, actually, all the kill scenes that either they became a bit more extensive or extended, a bit more gory, perhaps,
Yeah.
or I was just trying to utilize the city as a protagonist, not in the first as much because you're kind of creating this world that people are getting to know, but
Mm.
more so in book 2 and 3, using Budapest and using Brussels as a protagonist and using these main big tourist spots that people know and then turning that into like a macabre setting instead of a touristy scene.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great idea as well. It gives people a completely different feel of these cities that are,
Hmm.
wonderful, I'm sure. So, but yeah, I think that's a great idea. Really good. So there is a certain amount of weirdness going on in your mind then as you're writing this stuff. And
Thanks.
yeah, I think that's fair to say for all of us, really. I mean, really, with sci-fi and things like that, you've got to have a
Hmm.
kind of a level of weirdness going on. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how weird are you?
I prefer the terminology quirky, thank you.
Okay, okay, quirky's good. Quirky's good.
I think
I
12
do
out
that.
of 10 with quirkiness. And maybe weird, yeah, 10, but I like weird. Normal's boring.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
how far do you get in life if you're boring and standard, right? So,
Absolutely right. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. No, I think that's good because I think it allows that creativity to flow as well. If you've
hmm
got that kind of mentality of, all right, where's this story going and what's this character going to do? Because as you said, you get to know your characters. You
hmm
know, you've written them out and you know who they are.
yeah.
They very much kind of steer the dialogue for you and the direction that almost, if you like, they want to go in as opposed to where you want to take them.
hmm Yeah, that happened even again with kill scenes, as in there was a certain character that I really didn't want to say goodbye to, but it just drove the narrative in a way
Yeah.
that there
Yeah.
would be way more drama or way more emotional impact that way. Because well, a lot of the readers have reached out saying, "How dare you kill that one love? That was my favorite. That was
Yeah.
my favorite." But I was like,
Yeah.
okay, people won't see this one coming probably, so it will create an extra sense of, well, really no one's safe in this case, that kind of
Yeah.
feeling. So yeah.
Yeah. Did you find it difficult to let characters go in terms of
Yeah.
their games?
For one of them, I remember writing that kill scene and I was like, oof, I need a cigarette. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
went to my balcony, had a little bit of cigarette, had an espresso, took a little moment, went on a little walk, and then I continued writing. But yeah, I guess it's because you create these characters in your head. There's always subconsciously or consciously a part of the character that's part of you, right? Or maybe it represents a friend or an ex or a family member, and then seeing that person go is a bit like, oof, there's a bit of a tiny bit of mourning going on, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, I couldn't agree more. I find that sometimes, if you've got a character that you've sort of nurtured all the way through, and then you cut them off,
Hmm.
as you said, you've got to go out and have a cigarette because the
Yeah,
emotion from the writer yourself, it's just like, oh wow, is that really what's going to happen? But the good thing about that is, of course, that your reader's going to experience the same thing. Um,
right. Yeah.
and,
Or you would hope, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And of course, that's what you want. You want your readers to be invested in your characters.
Hmm.
And I think, I certainly became invested in the first couple of characters immediately in your Europa Hall series. So let's talk a little bit about that now, because I mean, as I said, I read the first part of it, and honestly, it kind of did give me the shivers. So it's
Well, I'm
certainly
glad.
living up to the name. Yeah, I know it sounds a little bit cliche, but it really did. As better, I really felt it was that classic. When you watch a film, right, and you think, Right, this, don't look behind you. The killer's behind you. Don't look behind
Just
you.
keep going. You know the rules.
Yeah, yeah. And the frustration of the ability for her to escape from where she was. She couldn't get away because she dropped the keys when she was picking up the remote for the TV. It's like, oh,
Mm.
come on. So you feel, as a reader, you feel that frustration. And then, the killer behind, it's really good. I'm going to kind of hand it over to you a little bit,
Hmm.
really, with Europa Halls. So start with, so you've got Europa Halls, which is the first one.
Hmm.
And you've got Europa Halls 1, and that's set in a different city, isn't it?
The second one is in Budapest.
In
Yeah.
Budapest, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the third one
Excuse me.
comes to Brussels.
Yeah, that one starts off in Budapest and Spain and
Yeah,
then ends up in Brussels, kind of going full circle. Yeah.
nice. That's good. So as I hand it over to you, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit more details without spoiling
Tricky.
and the
Yeah.
deaths in it.
Uh-huh. Or the killer, yeah. Or
Or the
killer.
killer, yeah. Start with the first one, Europa Halls, and then kind of go from there, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. I'll show those who are watching. This is the
Yeah, there
first
we
one.
go. Oh,
With it.
I love the covers. Oh, we'll talk about those in a moment.
Yeah, I
Remind me
love
if
these
I
too.
don't, because I think they're brilliant. Yeah, they're great. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no worries. So this is Europea Halls 1. Um, this one is kind of a big homage to 90s slasher. That's how it came about. It's about six girls from all over Europe who go to a prestigious boarding school in Brussels, which is
Mm,
my hometown. And I would say it's a bit of a mix of urban legend. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream, but then modernized in the way that there's queer representation, for example, that it's set in modern day times. A lot of twists and turns, different point of views. I mean, first person point of view, but from all six characters. So you get to
yeah,
know something about the different culture of each girl, where they come from, the way that they link their dynamics. An important thing for me as well here was that I didn't want the typical cliche of a blonde girl has sex and she dies, to put it bluntly. I
yeah,
wanted people to actually care about the characters and see that they're friends and that there's no backstabbing, no pun intended,
mm,
happening, but they actually work together and they want to get through it together. And it was important to me to show strong female characters without the typical male perspective as a male author of going, oh, they're doing this. I'm sure they'll do something dumb and they'll get killed off. I wanted to care about my characters
yeah.
and to make sure that comes through, hopefully.
Yeah, I like
So
the
that's
way that, sorry to interrupt, but I like the way that you've kind of pulled the girls together with the name of the group chat,
Mhm.
which I think that was really good because it's an acronym for all of the girls' names, isn't it?
Yeah, Miola,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I think that's really good. So you kind of already start to get drawn into what's going on as well. So that's really good. Sorry, carry on. I just
Yeah,
want.
no worries, no worries. Yeah, and of course, something about the acronym is important, but I don't want to give away too much. It is tricky to talk about it
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, sure, yeah.
Then whoever makes it out alive in the first one, this is Europea Halls 2, A Summer in Budapest. This is actually my other hometown. All the cities that are mentioned in the trilogy is I've lived in different cities around Europe, and I
Oh,
also used to live in Budapest in the past.
mhm.
And this is my absolute favorite city in the world, so I really wanted to show my love of Budapest in the sequel.
Yeah,
So whoever made it alive in the first one, they go on a summer trip to Budapest, kind of a way of getting over or trying to work through trauma. The focus is really, it's a bit deeper than the first one because I wanted there to be more focus on mental health representation.
mhm.
Um, a lot of the times with slashes, it's just a lot of slashing, and then that's kind of it. There's a final girl, but in this one, I really wanted to show the effect of what happens if you lose your best friends. How do you cope? What kind of therapy do you go through?
Yeah,
And making you really care about this character. So because of that, of course, the kills hopefully have way more impact in the second one because some people have lived through a lot to get to where they are.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's the second one, European Halls 2, and then the third one will be is released the 1st of May, so 2 days ago, right?
yeah,
And that one, the hardcover I don't have yet. It's it'll come here soon probably.
yeah,
And that one's kind of the concluding chapter of whoever did or didn't make it out alive. They have to go back to the boarding school, full circle. That one focuses more intergenerational trauma and also the effect it has on parents and family members. Because again, I thought in slasher it doesn't happen very often that you see the parents having a significant role
all right.
other than just, hey, this is the mom or this is the dad, or so I wanted them to have a say in the final part too, so that each part of the trilogy, they're all very much slashers, but they have a different vibe to them, and
Yeah.
kind of so it's not just copy pastes. That's the idea behind it.
That's bad. So do you have a favorite character that you've written, even if you may have killed her off?
Yeah, and actually from the first book I can show. By the way, that's why there's no like faces on the second one because I didn't want to show who did or didn't make it out alive, even though I love
Brilliant,
them.
excellent, really good. Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought a bit of a spoiler, right? So this one's my favorite. This is Ingvild. She's Norwegian
Hmm.
and she's a big architecture buff, and I'm an absolute geek when it comes to architecture. Even where I live in an Art Nouveau apartment, and I'm big on all those like embellishments and things. And I used to actually live in Norway for a little bit when I was 16. So it's about also incorporating that culture and the city that she comes from. So
Yeah.
I think there's quite a lot of me in Ingvild. So she's my fave, yeah.
Oh, that's really good. It is nice. I think we all have favorites as well. So yeah, that's nice. I like that. I was going to ask you something else, but then that would be a bit of a spoiler. But that's okay. So let's talk
After the
about. I
recording.
don't want to do that. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the covers. I really like. Can you hold them up side by side? I know
Absolutely, yeah.
we've talked about the fact that you on the second book you haven't got the faces on there. So
Mhm.
did you design? Actually, I'm assuming your third one has a similar sort of design.
Yeah, and the third one, it's just the killer, and then bits and pieces of shattered stained glass representing like the Gothic library in Europea Halls itself,
Yeah, in the
but
first.
no
Yeah,
characters, so that you don't know who's still in there. So yeah,
that's really. So, did you design those yourself, or did you have a
no,
designer
no,
work with?
I ain't that good, trust me. I worked with Matt Seth Barnes, and he's really known within the horror community. He's quite a big name. He, for example, he made covers for Nick Roberts, and one of his novels, The Exorcist's House, is at the moment in development to be turned into a film. And I saw him using a lot of different covers, and I have different covers too, the original ones that are still paperback.
Wow.
Um, they were a bit more minimalistic, but I thought, okay, I need something that's more apt to the vibe of slashers.
Hmm.
And I saw all these different covers, and I was like, I'm just gonna reach out to him, and he's pro within the horror genre. And I thought, oh,
Yeah.
he's probably gonna say no, but he was very enthusiastic because he'd never made a slasher trilogy cover or graphic design, so it was great working with him actually.
Yeah. So how did you? I mean, my designer, there's a lot of sort of back and forth in terms of how
Mm,
do you like this? No, let's change that. Tweak a little
yeah.
bit color here. Was it the same sort of process with you?
Absolutely, definitely for the first one. I think I had such a specific image in mind. I wanted this, 90s
Hmm.
poster Scream, I Know What You Till Summer. There was always the floating heads of the characters. They all look a bit serious and ominous.
Yeah.
Uh, so and like the smokiness, the redness, I wanted all of those elements. For the second one, I was a bit more like, okay, you can do what you want, but I do want the chain bridge, which is the main bridge in Budapest, to be on there because it's a very big metaphor in the book about crossing that bridge of getting over, not getting over, but working through trauma.
Yeah.
But other than that, I told them, okay, no faces, but other than that, you do you. So yeah, I
That's
was very
really.
adamant in the beginning, but then I became a bit, I was okay, let go, Alan. So
Yeah, isn't that amazing though? When you're thinking about covers and you've got an idea of your cover in your mind, like you just explained with the bridge, which is, sort of part of their journey. I
mhm,
think a lot of people wouldn't necessarily know that, but as writers, we have very specific ideas of
yeah,
how to illustrate the story itself. And I mean, I probably wouldn't have come across that. Maybe I would have done if I'd read the entire book, but I hadn't probably wouldn't have come across that right at the very beginning. And it's really nice to have somebody like you to say, right, this is why it's here, and it makes so much sense.
mhm,
And that's really, and I love the colors as well. That's very definitely 90s slasher, but also
yeah,
very representative of the story as well, itself. So I think that's really good. So now you've finished the trilogy. Is
yep.
it going to be a trilogy? There's not going to be another one?
Um, Probably not, but you never know. If there is demand, you never.
Yeah, yeah,
For me, it's kind of a closed chapter now. I kind of said goodbye to that world. I was a bit
yeah,
sad about it, a bit melancholic. I'm sure you've gone through that process too.
yeah. And
Yeah,
again, the reason I ask is because I wanted to ask you as the writer how it felt when you'd actually finished the trilogy and you put it down. You thought, right, that's it for Europa Halls. We're done. How did it feel once you'd actually finished writing?
kind of heavy. I remember the first draft kind of going "Oof," when I wrote the epilogue. I
Yeah,
was like, oh God, is this really it? Kind of. And then, but you keep, as you know, reworking second, third, fourth, 500th drafts.
yeah,
So after a while, I guess anxiety crept in a little bit more, and I was like, okay, I just want it to be over and done with.
Yeah.
So it's out there in the world, it's released, and now I can breathe and enjoy. Because it doesn't matter if I read it back in 5 years, I can still crawl back into that world. So it doesn't have to be done necessarily, you know?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. No, I
Mm.
think that's good. So do you have plans then for now you've got it, obviously you've got it as a ebook, paperback and hardback
Yeah.
for each of them. Have you got plans for turning it into a different medium, say an audiobook, for example?
Yeah, some people have asked me, but audiobook would be very tricky because the thing is that there's 6 girls from all over Europe, all having different accents. None of them are
Yeah.
native speakers, just like myself. So
Yeah.
if there would be an audiobook, I really would want 6 different girls to narrate the story, but
Oh,
that would
wow.
be
Okay.
very pricey as an indie author.
Yes, you would.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I wouldn't want to just like one narrator because I don't think it would do justice to the story and the multicultural aspect, which is for me
Mm.
very important.
Yeah.
Living in Brussels, it's the most multicultural city in Europe. So that's a big thing that's in my daily life that I would want in the audiobook. So
Yeah.
audiobook, no. Film, question mark.
So again, I was going to ask you about that because on your Instagram,
hmm
there's an image of the is it Sadie Sink who
Yeah, from Stranger Things. Yeah, I love her.
yeah to play Lucia. Lucia, is that how you say it?
Lucia. Yeah, the
Lucia, that's it.
Croatian.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. I mean, wow. I mean, if that happened, that would be really good. I don't know if you
One
know,
can
but
dream.
well, absolutely. Having said that, I spoke to an author, Beth Barani, a while ago, and she's turning one of her series, Henrietta the Dragon Slayer, into a movie series herself. It's in production now,
Oh.
so and she's running the whole thing. So it's entirely possible. It might be just a dream, but it's out there.
hmm
It is available, and I think sometimes it just takes just one little spark for someone to go, that should be a movie. That should be a
hmm
series, and away it goes. I think that'd be so cool if that happened, because there needs to be a resurgence of these 90 slashers that will be entertaining. How can I put it? It's entertainment that you don't have to think about too much. Really, is right there on the screen.
Yeah. Kind of
See.
MTV era flashiness, right? There's this
Yeah,
campiness about it. It's a little bit smoother, not as gritty as the 80s, but it's just kind of popcorn material, isn't it? Like a roller
yeah.
coaster.
Yeah, I think
hmm
sometimes, people try to read too much into or try to read between the lines sometimes.
hmm
And I think as writers, we always leave clues,
Yeah.
and foreshadow what's going to happen. And sometimes I mean, I don't know about you, but if you've read a book or you've watched a movie or something like that, do you see them? Do you see the little things that they drop in that foreshadow what's going to happen next?
Sometimes I do, but it would be arrogant to say that I always do because a lot of times I go, I'm sure this means something, and then I go, oh no, it doesn't. It's just me.
Yeah, yeah,
So I'm kind of overanalyzed. That's my character anyway. So
yeah.
a lot of the times I'm wrong about it's more like the red herrings,
Yeah.
that I go, oh, I got it. No, I don't.
No,
So
don't.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you find then that because sometimes that you do that, I mean, I do it myself when I'm reading, is that I think, oh, okay, I can see where that's going to go. I know what's going to happen with that character. And sometimes it's very obvious. Does that spoil your reading enjoyment? Or for me, I try not to do that. I do try to switch off that kind of analytic, critical mind, if you like,
Mhm.
and just enjoy the story. Can you do that, or is because you're a writer, you just see it?
Hmm. There's a kind of how's it called in English? There's this expression. Sorry, I'm thinking through Flemish now. Suspension of disbelief? No,
Yeah, yeah,
suspension of belief.
yeah.
What's it called? Which of the two?
I think it's suspension of belief. I think.
Yeah, that you allow yourself to not be too critical when you go in a fictional world, and that's something that I do. That's a step I consciously take when I go into certain narratives,
Yeah,
because once you start dissecting too much, then you're not enjoying its art at the end of the day. You're not enjoying the art anymore if you're just looking at little plot holes or things like that. Or
yeah.
just go for the ride. I'd say not everything has to be overly analytical or over serious. So.
Yeah, I agree, and that's fascinating actually, because I sometimes think, because you're right, writing is an art form, and as a writer, specifically if you're a new writer, and you're just starting, let's say you're starting your first story, your first manuscript.
hmm
There's so much out there in terms of you must include this, a sentence
Yeah.
needs to have that, a paragraph must do this. I think you can get bogged down education in terms of how to write sometimes.
Mhm.
Because I think as it is an art form, there really shouldn't be any rules. Would you agree with that?
Wow, that's a good question and a tricky question because I
Hmm.
I have a formal training, however you want to call it. I study literature at uni.
Wow, okay.
So a lot of the times I was given those rules for 5, 6 years of my life.
Yeah.
Um, certain things I do think grammar structure and cohesion and like linking words, things like that, they do matter, I think.
Mm.
Um, oh, I don't know how to. What do you think?
Well,
I want to
no,
hear your answer.
I agree with you. Absolutely agree with you. I think there is, there has to be. I mean, when you're writing, and I'm sure as you know, when you go through the first draft, you're just trying to get the story down, and then
Hmm.
in the second draft, when you kind of go back to edit, really, if you like, to rewrite, you are then looking at how it's written, how a reader will read it. Is it easy to read?
Hmm.
Are we choosing the right um, verbs and things like that that makes the words come alive to create the imagery and give it some energy so a reader wants to read more. So I suppose there is a technical element that does come into it. Initially,
Hmm.
I think it is just a story, but I think if you're first, and I was thinking about this earlier on before we started talking, I think sometimes that, if you've got a story in your head, you just got to get it down. And then
Yeah,
you kind of learn how to write it properly afterwards, if you like. Is that the sort
yeah,
of thing that is right?
very much the case. Yeah, I would say. Oh, sorry. I think it's the Amazon
Ah,
thing. Could
that's
I
good.
give 1 second?
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah,
Okay, I'll be right back. Is that okay?
yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely. Of course it
Okay,
is.
okay.
Absolutely.
2 seconds.
I'll just carry on talking. So we were saying earlier on before Alan and I actually came on that the last book in his series, Europa Halls 3, is has just come out. And so he's just waiting for the delivery from Amazon of the first sort of books really to come out so we can actually see them. So I kind of said to him, right, well, if you do need to go and get them, that's absolutely fine. As long as when you come back, you do an unboxing. So this is great because this is going to be the first time that anyone has seen a real version of his book. So we'll kind of just wait for him to come back and get them. So it's kind of exciting because we know as writers, once you've got your book in hand. So this is my so when this book arrived, now this is the proof copy from Amazon. When this arrived, this was the first time that you as a writer you actually get to feel your work, your art really, and I can't describe the feeling of having it so that it is right there in front of you. It's really good. So I'm hoping that Alan, when he comes back, will do a bit of an unboxing for us so we can share in that moment. It is quite something. And if you are thinking about writing a book, as we were saying earlier on, while we're just waiting for Alan to come back, get the story down, just write it. Don't worry about the writing conventions and the education and all that sort of stuff in terms of how to write a story and story arcs and character arcs, etc., etc. Just get the story down and then learn how to write it afterwards. Then you can kind of go out and get the education. There's plenty of it around. But I would say equally that when you are going through that process of educating yourself in terms of how to write it, there is a lot of information out there, as I said. What you really need to do is to find what works for you. That's the important thing, because then you'll be invested more in your story and you'll be thinking more about how you can clean it up in terms of using the proper conventions for getting the story out and revamping the story so that it is a book or a story, a short story or a novella or whatever it is, so that your reader can sit and would really want to know more about the story and of course get to know more about you as the author as well. So we'll just wait for Alan to come back in and then hopefully we can get the first look at his Halls, Europa Halls 3. And here he comes. There it is. All right, so here's the package. Oh, there it is.
my doggy too following me. I'm so sorry about that.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I was just saying to the folks before is to kind of, if they're writing the books, get the story down and then do the education afterwards, as we've just said. So, are you willing to open that so we can have a look?
Whew, I am. It's always a bit of a special moment, isn't it? Too. And
Yeah,
it's like it will be complete now, the trilogy. So I'm excited. I hope it doesn't look
absolutely.
like Absolute Two We'll see. So basically, it's the hardcover and the paperback because they look a
Nice.
bit different. Um, let's see.
Wow.
Woohoo!
Okay.
Europea Halls 3.
That's really nice.
Looks lush. Yeah,
Yeah,
and then there's some Goodreads early reviews from ARC reviewers in there too.
fantastic.
And so I got all three now. My trilogy is complete. Like
Wow,
this. Yay!
that's really good. So,
Yeah.
there's your evening read. Do you go back and read your story yourself? When you read it, do you think, "Oh, I can't believe I wrote that"?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of make sure, first of all, when it comes to spelling and all that, right? So you make sure
Yeah.
that it looks decent, that everything's correct.
Yeah.
And in this case, for the trilogy, I did go back to make sure that there was enough cohesion between the three,
Mhm.
and little things like age, like how old is this character by now? Because we're two summers ahead,
Of
or
course. Yeah.
little things like that, or this little shop that one character went in the first one, then goes back in the third, things like that. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I might actually this weekend or next week go through all of them now that I have them in physical, because I don't read ebooks. I'm very old school with that stuff. So
Yeah, I have just gone over to the dark side. I do
yeah,
have an e-reader because I've got a lot of books on there. So, like you, I do like the feel of
hmm
the physical feel of a book. Hold up your third one again. Let's have another look. You
yeah,
got to see it.
yeah, really nice. I don't know if you see it, but there's like the stained glass from the library of
Yeah.
the Gothic kind of library of Europea Halls. So it feels cool, and the shards are at the back as well.
Nice.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
really good. I love that. Yeah. So it continues across. Yeah,
yeah.
that's
Oh,
really
He's,
good.
he's so good at what he does. Matt Seth Barnes. If you're a horror author, people work with this guy. Trust me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's absolutely that's beautiful. It's really nice. Now you've got all three together, you can have them on. That's
My
fantastic.
babies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're there. All right, so I won't keep you too much longer because
No, no
if
worries.
it was me, I would want to be getting stuck into the reading of them again, which is great. So before you go, then before I let you go, what's next for you? What do you have another project in mind, or are you working on one now?
I'm kind of mind mapping another one at the moment because this entire trilogy has been released in the space of just 8 months, so it was
Wow.
really got quite fast paced.
Yeah.
So I wanted to take my time a bit without giving myself a deadline. So I am working this summer. I'll start the writing process of another slasher, but a different feel, a different subgenre within the slasher world. But I don't want to give away too much because I kind of want it to be like a surprise release.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, but it'll be another slasher.
That's
And then
fantastic.
after that, I'll probably branch out a bit and stay within the horror genre or thriller genre for sure.
Yeah.
But I do want to try something else because I have actually just written a short story too for Books of Horror. So
Okay.
that's the biggest like horror community online. And they've asked me for Pride Month in June to write like a gay horror short story.
Okay.
So that's a bit of a paranormal psychological one that I've written for that. So that's
Sounds
very
good.
different and a lot more spicy than my trilogy as well.
That's really good. That's really good. So now you've got your trilogy. It's there and it's complete. Where can people buy them? Yeah, take a breath. You've done.
Come over to Brussels and buy it from me, people.
Absolutely. Where can people buy them? Where are they available?
They're globally over Amazon. They're free to read on Kindle Unlimited,
Okay, good.
and then the ebook, paperback, and hardcover are on Amazon as well. In the future, I'll probably will consider to go wide, but as this was my first trilogy, you know,
Yeah.
everything is new as an indie author, so I worked just with Amazon for now, but we'll
Yeah,
see.
and it's easier with Amazon, isn't it? We can
hmm
just do the whole thing in one go, and there it is. That's great. Well, look, there'll be links to everything so people can connect with you and all of that sort of thing in the description of this video. But congratulations, well done.
Thank you, thank you.
I mean, really, you've got to hold it up again one more time. Let's have a last look before you go.
I'll
Um,
put all three
all three, there they
with the
are,
number one, two, and
and the third
the
one.
fresh baby.
Yes,
Yeah.
they do.
Ah, it looks lush, doesn't it? I'm so
It
happy.
really does. It
Very
really does
chuffed.
look good. As I say, congratulations. And it really
Thank you.
does live up to your pen name. It does give you the shivers. So I can kind of recommend them as well. So congratulations. Thank you so
Thank you,
much for
Paul.
coming. And please let me know once you've got some new work coming out and we'll talk again.
That'll be, yeah. My goal is September or October for the next release. We'll see. We'll see
That's
if it's
really good.
manageable. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for now, Alan Shivers, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me on, and thanks for those of you who are listening or watching. I appreciate it.
You
Yeah.
know. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on another captivating episode of the Page Turnerz podcast. We hope you enjoyed delving into the pages with us, discovering new stories, and revisiting beloved classics. If you're as passionate about books as we are, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Your feedback keeps us bringing you fascinating discussions, author interviews, and book recommendations. Remember, the adventure never ends when you have a book in hand. Until next time, keep turning those pages and let the magic of storytelling continue to inspire your imagination. Happy reading.